Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 148. We are getting very, very close to our 150th episode, and we've got some fantastic guests lined up over the next few weeks. We really have, which I'll tell you about a little bit more into the podcast. So this week you have the three of us together. We will touch base with the hosts, and then we will kind of move forwards. We're going to talk about recent guests that we've had on, because we've had some really interesting ones that we've just been having a bit of a discussion before starting to record. Last week we had Tom Morrison on from the Simple Mobility Method. We had Brett Sanders the week before from the Natural Dio Company. And prior to that, we had Chris Branch talking about his 100-mile run that he was kind of training for, which we will give a little bit of an update on in this podcast. And next week, Chris is actually coming on to kind of do a bit of a debrief and kind of pick apart what happened on that run, which we'll talk about in a bit. But yes, we've got some really interesting bits coming up. And like I say, I will tease you later with the guests we've got coming up over the next 3 or 4 weeks as well. But before we do that, Mr. Peter Lant in Bath, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I've just opened up a bottle and it's empty, so that's no good, is it? Yeah, I'm doing very well, actually. It's all go at the minute round here, and I'm actually looking after my mate's dog as well at the minute, who's asleep under my table because it's really warm. My mate Steph, it's her dog Banjo. And what Banjo's got the greatest honour of being with me while I hit my 3 millionth step for the year, so I'm quite happy with that so far.
Oh, so did you take Banjo out with you on the walk?
Yeah.
And Sid as well.
Yeah. I mean, it was just a normal day's walk. It just so happens that it happened to be the day that I've hit 3 million. So
is Banjo a fit dog, or is he?
He is now.
He is now. I was about to say, sometimes some dogs are well fed.
All right, no, he's a working. Steph, whose dog it is a PT, and he's a working cocker spaniel. So and he's only
class,
so he's full of beans. So yeah, so that was good.
And just for listeners who may not, I'm sure everybody does follow everything that we all do closely, but just in case you don't, Pete has set himself the 6 million step challenge over the course of 2023. So hitting that 3 million steps is halfway through his target for the year. And he's got about 3 weeks left till we're actually halfway through the year. Yeah, end of June.
15 days it'll be.
15 days, sorry, 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks. So he's 2 weeks ahead of schedule on the where he needs to be. Yeah, brilliant.
So that's what brings me to it's easier to keep up than catch up.
Yes, we'll talk about that in a bit. We touched upon that and the stuff that I'm doing with my guys this last week, which I think I'm going to do. We're certainly going to roll into next week as well with it, and possibly make it an ongoing thing. But yeah, the steps is really interesting, but we'll like I say, we'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a bit after we've caught up with Team Hounds of Health, Paul in Putney. How are you?
Team Hounds of Health. Yes.
It's only one. It's what you're down as on Zoom, isn't it? It's what you are on Zoom.
It is. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that's true. I can say I've forgotten about that. I'm good. Yes. I'm enjoying the fact that I can wear a t-shirt and not be freezing cold on my bike, and The studio is quite cool. We've got good air conditioning, so I've got nothing to worry about. It's all right.
You had the doors wide open the other day. I hope you don't have the doors wide open while the air conditioning's on, do you?
You don't. No. First rule of air conditioning. Yes.
Create a sealed unit.
But if you followed the Instagram post, then you would see that there was a fan of the last part in slow motion. Actually, I was videoing a fan in slow motion, thinking that it was slow enough that I would see the fan. But actually, it looks slower when you're playing it at normal speed versus when you put it in slow motion. It actually looks static at normal speed, but then you put it into slow motion and it looked fast. That's a little...
What's that called? It's the wheel when wheels.
Yeah, I was going to say car
Yeah.
wheels in films.
It's got to go backwards, don't they? With
There must be an engineer listening to this podcast.
I can't remember what that's called. We won't Google it, but not in the middle of the podcast. But yeah, it must have a name.
Yeah. Good. Well, no, it sounds good. Yeah. So we are obviously in the middle of a kind of a heat wave week or so, maybe 2 weeks at the moment where we're recording, aren't we? Where the weather's been absolutely gorgeous and sunny, clear blue skies. Like I said, I think before we started recording, I got to work at 5:45 this morning and left home about 5:30 in shorts and a t-shirt, and it was warm at that time, which is fantastic. So
yeah, I saw a lady walk past this morning. We were out in the park this morning. She walked past with a pushchair, a baby in the pushchair, with a fan attached to the pushchair.
yeah.
like
How fast was it going with
that? Like a what are they called? Hovercraft. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Big fan on the back.
Little sail.
Okay. So, I mean, recently we have had some, like we said, some great guests. Chris is going to come on again next week. So, Chris, if you haven't listened to that episode, I've had so much good, positive feedback about that episode where we really kind of deep dived into his training for the 100-mile race, which he actually did last Saturday, which was the day after. Again, this is where we're going podcast kind of time travel. But he did the 100 miles, was going for the 100 miles the day after the podcast came out. And I think it was the hottest day of the year. It was about 30 degrees. And I mean, a lot of you probably follow Chris now since listening to the podcast, but he pulled out at about 46 or 48 miles, I think. So we're going to kind of unpack that and see what happened on the day. But I remember that day I did a spinning class in the morning at about 9 a.m. and he had started running at 6 a.m. And I did this 45-minute spinning class at 9 a.m., which was swelteringly hot, indoors in the shade. And and I said to a few people, Christ, he's out there running at the moment and he's been running for like 4 or 5 hours. And I can't think of anything worse. It was the worst possible day to do it. I know he's
also he's got red hair, hasn't he? So presumably he's not that great in the heat. He's like,
I mean, he had one of those what the picture I saw, he had one of those big kind of light sun hats, that kind of gave him quite a lot of shade. But yeah, I mean, we'll unpack it properly next week with him. But I mean, I know you kind of tracked him for a bit, didn't you, Pete? You put something in our group where you kind of could track or something like that, was it?
Yeah, he had it said, like, he posted something on Instagram. I was just flicking through and saw it, and then he said, well, follow me, like follow me or via his profile. So I went and had a look, and he was 23 miles in at the time, I think, and I was like, oh, good going. I was just about like on my second coffee, I think. Surfacing. So yeah,
because he obviously had a chip or whatever on, but yeah, doing that, I mean, that was a terrible. So he did kind of 20 miles more than a marathon, So we won't talk about it too much. So we'll be speculating at the moment without actually speaking to him. But I think he's taken a lot from it and learned a lot from it. And I think he said in one of the messages he sent me was the heat was a factor, but he thinks that highlighted a kind of a deeper problem that was already there or something. So we're going to kind of obviously hear all about that when we speak to him. But no, that'd be great. And after Chris, we had Brett on, the Natural Deo company. And I know that I was already using the natural deodorant prior to the podcast for a couple of months. But since we've done the podcast, both of you guys have started using it as well, haven't you? Oh, and if you're on YouTube, you can see Paul holding up his orange and bergamot deodorant from the Natural Deo company.
He obviously carries it around with him in his pocket.
Well, I'm a personal trainer in getting sweaty all the time,
Good point.
I don't know when you need to dip into the hummus.
I was waiting for you to say that, because I said before we started recording, didn't I? So my I've been using it and it's lovely. It like, when I say lovely, I mean it's like how it was described on the podcast and everything. It's not slimy and all that sort of stuff. I really like it. I really like how it feels. It doesn't knack your t-shirts and all that. But Sid, my dog, has started licking my armpits after I put it on because he's like, "Ooh, that's lovely."
Do me.
So it must
No,
be
but
natural. It
I
must be
find-
natural, otherwise he wouldn't go for it, would he?
No. And I must say that, like, even in this extreme heat, I apply it like first thing in the morning, and I'm at work all day, and I'll train throughout the day as well. And I just find it's really, really good. So I will do this now online. I mean, you will have probably seen it on some of our social media posts. But if you are listening to this now and you didn't get round to ordering any, or you might want to, they've Brett has very kindly given us a 20% discount link if you want to give the natural deodorant a go. And maybe we can drop it in the show notes as well. But it's Natural Deo, so Natural DEOCO, so naturaldeoco.com/Health Oddity / and if you put that link in, it should automatically apply a 20% discount, so you can give it a go. But yeah, we're not on any commission or we're not get anything back from that. It's just we're all using it now. So yeah, if you want to give it a go.
No, it really works.
Yeah.
I mean, yesterday I did a 5-minute long cycle set, and tons of squats and press ups and a bench and stuff, and it was intense, and did cardio and ran and all those things. I was fine.
Yeah.
Did you finish this one? Because that video you sent us was hilarious. There was no sound on it though. I couldn't.
No sound. Yeah, no, there wasn't.
Because it was just straight at the edge.
Because there was a lot of swearing in it.
Yeah.
That's why I took the sound off, because I was going to post it to my clients to show that everyone gets frustrated. No, it's me trying to attempt a 10-minute long cycle. No, jerk set with 20s, and it just didn't go very well. I was not at the right place mentally or physically that day, to the point where I got to about 7 minutes in, didn't know what to do with myself. I'm really annoyed. Internal monologue was going, "You idiot." Apologies for that. That's exactly what happened. Then I threw my kettle. I've never thrown my kettlebells on the floor before, but I threw them on the floor.
I've got a tip for you. Do it at home on wooden floorboards.
Right, and you won't throw them.
That's not an option.
But then I tried to do a 10-minute snatch set afterwards, and I actually felt pretty good for that. And then that didn't happen. About a minute into it, I was just like, I'm going to feel ill. So, but anyway, yeah. So I was more annoyed because I know I could do it. And I reckon I could have done, on a different day. I think it just caught up with me. I had a difficult weekend of sleep and things, but it was in the plan. So I was going to do it. And, sometimes you've done enough training, you get to a point where maybe your training's outstripped your recovery, and, a number of weeks where a little bit of poor sleep and poor recovery.
That's interesting, because for pistols, for me, I was getting up to doing 5 sets of 3, then 4, then 5, 6, up to 5 sets of 10, and then starting on the next weight and building back up again. I got to 28 kilos, but Paul had me doing like normal pistols, holding the bell in goblet squat style, and then 1 set at the end with the bell in the rack. And it got to the point where the one in the rack, I just couldn't do it. Like even one, I couldn't do it. So I messaged him and he said, right, we're at that point now. So what he's done is drop the volume right down on the other pistol, on the sets of like 7, 8, 9, 10, and put in a few more sets of singles and doubles with the bell in the rack to work on the skill. Because he's like, you can do the weight.
Yeah.
And you've already pistoled the beast. We just want to make sure that when you do actually do it, you can do 2 or 3 of them. Yeah. So that's really interesting. So because my recovery was obviously, I could recover on those pistols, but the more technical ones I just couldn't do. And it was because my central nervous system wasn't letting me.
No, I mean, I'd done a 7-minute set 2 weeks earlier, and it was, I mean, it wasn't fun. It wasn't easy, but I did it. And it was quite, looking at on a piece of paper, you're looking, okay, done that. The numbers were good. Everything was fine. Everything's progressing. And then just on the day, you can't, and it's quite, I mean, certain things, particularly when things get heavy or the duration, and I'm sure we can talk about this with Chris, there's a psychological element to it, and I just wasn't, there was too many questions in my head. And I think I got myself too I was just fixating on the 10 minutes, and I've done 10 minutes with other weights multiple times. I just on the day, I think, I just taught myself into a. I think if I'd shown up on it, you can never be in an optimal condition, can you? It's very difficult to suddenly turn up on the day in optimal condition, and I suppose that's what sets very high performing athletes apart from average people, is that it doesn't matter if they're feeling great or just been in an argument with their spouse or whatever, and they still show up and perform, don't they?
It's a Mark Rifkin quote, isn't it? There's everything's easy till it gets heavy, you know, and it's the same, you know, is that point, isn't it? That tipping point where it's not easy anymore. You know, at the moment, luckily with my training, everything's quite, the presses aren't easy, but everything else is fairly easy because I'm sort of starting from lower down and building up again. Like this morning, I had to do 10 sets of deadlift, 10 sets of back squats, 10 sets of bench press, 10 sets of pull-ups
in one day.
Yeah, I did it all in 45 minutes. 50 minutes I had, and did it all. But the weights were at a level which I knew I could do quite comfortably. There were like 10 sets of 4 deadlifts, 10 sets of 4 squats, 10 sets of 3 bench, and 10 sets of 5 pull-ups, you know, and I just did it like a slow circuit, and I knew, well, okay, as long as I get all 4 exercises done in 5 minutes, you know what I mean? Just going from one to the other, I can just do those 10 sets, and it was fine. It was quite nice. But, you know, give it 2 or 3 weeks time and it won't be quite so nice, you know?
This is going to lead us into what we said we were going to talk about, by the way, at the beginning. But I find this with sometimes I don't find it with myself anymore, because when Paul gives it and it's like 10 sets of 3 presses, it doesn't matter how heavy it is. I'm like, oh, that's great, because it's just easy.
It's over quick. Yeah, each set, it's the 10 sets of 10, isn't it? And
yeah, exactly. So, but the thing is, 10 sets of 3 is easy, 10 sets of 4 is easy, 10 sets of 5 is okay, 10 sets of 6. And then after that, it's just, you need, like the time you need to do it extrapolates out quite a lot. So I've had it in the past, and I have it now with some of the people who are training. I'll be like, do 10 sets of 3. I'll do like whatever, sets of 3 or 3, 2, 1 or whatever. And they'll want to do more. They're like, oh, well, that's too easy. And I'm like, it'll get harder. Trust me. Don't worry. But they seem to want to be able to do the harder stuff on the easy days. But then when it's too hard, they want to do easier stuff on the hard days. And it's like, that's the point. It's meant to fluctuate. It's not meant to all feel the same all the time. Otherwise, there's no adaptation, right? So, yeah, I just find that interesting.
It's funny because I'm really kind of getting into, you know, you do your circuits of things that you get into, don't you? You know, and at the moment, I'm just reading everything from Mike Mensa, you know, the bodybuilding.
High intensity stuff.
Yeah, the high intensity stuff. Yeah. And listening to the way he approached things. And, you know, the fact that he would work at very high level for a very short duration and have quite long levels of recovery. You know, it's interesting to see, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger used to train multiple times a day for many hours. And then you had Mike on the other side of the spectrum doing, and I hear Dorian Yates as well, you know, doing very short workouts, but extremely high intensity and having quite long recovery periods between body parts and things like that. There's so many ways. So interesting to hear how people are trying to manipulate. I think that's what makes fitness interesting, manipulating the body's response to stimulus. It's an art and it's a science at the same time. And that's what makes it so frustrating and so addictive at the same time, because it's not like a computer, you know, it can't be hacked, I don't think.
Well, what fascinates me about it as well is it's different for everybody. So what works for Arnold might work for Arnold.
Yeah.
If you applied that to Dorian Yates, it might have like completely ruined him. He might have been so stressed that he couldn't build any muscle or anything like that because he couldn't recover from it. So it depends on the person as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, that's why you have so much conflict in the fitness industry. I'm on YouTube and I get the algorithm dropping videos into my feed every day, and I get quite a lot of starting strength ones. And he's all, Mark Rippetoe is always very much about sets of 5 is the optimal way, and this is going to work. And then you've got other people, and I come from kettlebell sport, which is probably, if I sat down with Mark Rippetoe saying this is what I'm doing, he
hates kettlebells anyway, doesn't he? Mark
he'd leave the room. He would leave the room, And
I don't even know that he
not
does.
drinking enough.
I think he just says that to get reaction.
Oh, I know. Yeah. It's creating a persona and creating a reaction. Definitely.
It's difficult to know what optimal is. I think what I've done, the post I did with my clients today, it's not to say that like the Mike Mentzer way is the way to go, or the high volume way is the way to go, or the multiple sets is the way to go, or whatever. It is the intention that someone brings to the activity. And I think that's the one thing that I was interested about Mike's approach, is that at every set, the idea is that the most is taken from it, so that you don't go into your workouts with a kind of casual, I'll see how it goes kind of feeling. You're there like, if I'm going to be there for 30 minutes, like I'm going to get the most out of every single exercise. And I think when I speak to so many people on the phone and they're going, well, I need to train 5 days a week, this won't work for me. Twice a week's not enough. I train 7 days a week. That's the only way I get results. You do have to question their intention. So I think if someone can bring to whatever they're doing, whether it's diet or training, whether it's an endurance race like Chris, or strength training like we offer for our clients, if they come in with that mindset that they're going to do it properly, I don't see why you wouldn't get a result. And I think you're going to get a much better result, even if it's suboptimal, if your intention is extremely high.
I watched the thing. Oh, sorry, go on, Pete.
Oh, carry on. It's fine.
I watched the thing recently with Lane Norton, Bio Lane, and he was talking about some recent research around training to failure and how what gets the best results in terms of strength and hypertrophy or muscle growth. And for kind of like hypertrophy and muscle growth, then going to failure at certain times is kind of recommended, but usually done on, like, say, isolation exercises and machine exercises where it's much safer to do so rather than big compound. You don't really want to necessarily go to failure on like a barbell back squat or a barbell bench press or something like that. But like,
well, my mentor used Nautilus, didn't he? He was always recommend Nautilus machines.
Yeah. So like maybe a machine pec fly or something like this. But with strength, they were talking about very, very, very occasionally going to failure, but going close to failure, but not failure. So they use this reps in reserve, so how many reps in reserve have you got? So when you stop the set, it was saying about you really want to stop the set when you've got maybe 1 to 3 reps in reserve. But then what he was talking about was, but the fact that the vast majority of people, when they've done these studies, if you ask them how many reps do you think you could do past where you stopped, they would say, oh, only 1 or 2. But most of the time, when they tested them and they were pushed, they could do maybe another 5 or 6, So he was saying that most people actually have their internal gauge of how hard they're working and how much they're capable of is so skewed, similar kind of to what you're saying, that they may think they're training intensely or with training intently with intent, but they're actually so far away from from testing themselves or pushing themselves that there may be, they think you'd ask them and they'd say they were an RPE of 9 out of 10, but realistically they're probably more of a 6 or a 7. So it's this kind of notion of how hard people think they need to train. And again, touching on something we touched on a few weeks ago, I think people who feel they need to train 7 days a week because that's the only way they get results, probably are overcompensating with the training for, lack of discipline outside of the gym in terms of the sleep they're getting, the water they're doing, the steps they're doing, their diet, they're probably not eating particularly well. So they feel they almost have to overtrain to compensate for, a bad lifestyle, which is interesting as well.
I'm a member of a couple of groups on Facebook. Just in there seeing like what goes on. One of them's like bodybuild. It's like there are over 40 groups. One of them's a bodybuilders group, and another one's like a fitness over 40 type group, and all this. They've got loads of people in, and there's a lot of times when there's questions of my elbows are hurting, my knees are hurting, this is name the joint and it hurts. How can I stop that happening? And then people would be like, oh, what you need to do is fish oil or this or that or whatever. And it's like, what you need. And I've gone in before and said,
rest.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know you and I don't know what your goal is and all of that. However, if you're lifting intensely all the time, 7 days a week, because the people will often put, I'm working out on a Monday doing this and Tuesday doing this and Wednesday and blah, 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 6 days a week with 1 day off on a cycle, in their 40s, all of that. And instead of going in and saying, oh, it's because you're in your 40s and you're old, so therefore you need to take a step back, which isn't necessarily true. Basically, don't train 6 days a week, try 3 for a while, go a bit lighter, do more volume, make sure you're getting full range of motion, all of that, because people go on about time under tension and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, just take a step back and do this. And look, and the amount of times, I say the amount of times, like 3 or 4 times, because I don't comment on them that much. But I just think, I'll see what will happen. And they come back and go, that's not going to work for me. That's not enough. And I'm like, well,
You've tried it before.
Yeah. Well, therefore,
Probably.
Good luck to your elbows.
It's like when we had Brooks Cubic on. Brooks is very much into dinosaur training, obviously, but Brooks is very much in, and he's in his 60s now, isn't he? Mid to late 60s, I think, even 67 maybe. And he was always about abbreviated training. So, 2 or 3, 4 maybe maximum exercises per session, and training, 2 or 3 times a week, but hard, and recovering properly and eating properly in between, and then developing the strength and building the strength within that recovery period, and if you're training too often, too heavy, you're not recovering properly, you're not really building strength, so
I mean, that's the thing that no one ever talks about, really, when it comes to fitness, communicating fitness, because we have all the terms and the lingo, like high intensity interval training, smashing it, beast mode, all these things that talk about intensity. But really, I think one of the main determinants of progress at whatever pace is whether or not you can operate at an extremely high level of intensity for your level of skill, and how long you can sustain that for, and thus recover off the back of that intensity. And those people with the most aesthetic physiques, or the highest performance, are the ones who are able to express the highest level of intensity within their skill set, I think. And I think being able to learn that's one thing I learned working with Paul, was to get out of my own way a little bit and trust that I had done the work in terms of skill, so that then I could stop being a bit of a pussy and get on with it,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking briefly, I think it may have been before you came on, Paul, but it only came out yesterday, but Mark Bell's Power Project had Mark Allen on, 6 times Hawaii Ironman champion,
coached by Phil Maffetone.
Yeah, and many people refer to him, he's the GOAT of Ironman. He won it 6 times, and also David Scott, I think, or Dave Scott won it 6 times. But he kind of Mark Allen came in sort of at the end of Dave Scott's career and sort of took over, and then
an amazing race between them, I think, in 1989. I think
89 was meant to be like and they were saying that was the first time ever that the Ironman distance had been raced. It wasn't just people trying to finish it and survive. There was 2 people pushing each other and racing it right till the end. And they said that he beat Dave Scott by like 59 seconds, I think, in the end. He said they were neck and neck till like a mile and a half before the end of the marathon at the end. And with a mile to go, he just started to pull away, and he beat him by like a minute. And that race, with Dave Scott, if it is Dave, I think it's Dave Scott. His that was a PB time for him, 18 minutes faster than he'd ever done it in his life. And Mark Allen, that was 30 minutes faster than he'd ever done it in his life. So they both smashed their PBs and they raced till the end. And that's why it's held up as one of the greatest races and why he's seen as like the GOAT. But one of the reason I was saying that is it's a really, really good podcast. First of all, it would be great for people to listen to. But what Mark Allen was saying, and he does talk quite a lot about Phil Maffetone in the podcast. And Phil Maffetone is coming back onto the Health Oddity podcast because he coached, Mark Allen. So Phil Maffetone's back on in I think it's about 2 weeks, maybe. Paul, is it something like that? A couple of weeks time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, I think it's next
Yeah.
Thursday, is it?
No, 2 or 3 weeks. I think we've got him on. Maybe 29th. It's the end of June.
It's written down.
Yeah, it's written down. It's on the spreadsheet. So we've got Phil Maffetone coming back on. But what Mark Allen was saying was, it's not about how hard you can train. It's about how hard you can train and recover for tomorrow, so you can wake up and do it again. So most of the time he would be holding himself back and sticking to this Maffetone method, and his training partners would almost be racing through training sessions where he was very much like, and he said something like, people want to be like the champion of each training session, but really he didn't care about that. He wanted to be the champion when it mattered, when you're in competition. So a lot of the time he would let people go and do their own thing, and he would stick diligently to his MAF heart rate and all the rest of it. But it was really interesting. He said, it's not about how hard you can train. It's about how hard you can train and recover and wake up the next day and do it all over again, which I think is kind of what we're talking about. If you're waking up and you've got joint pains, or you're waking up and you can't move properly, or you need 3 days recovery in between, you're probably, especially as you get older, if you're in your 40s and 50s, you're probably training too hard.
It's funny because didn't Mark Allen, I don't know if he says it on the Mark Bell podcast, but I've heard him say, he said, look, why was I so fastidious? Why did I work in the way I did? He said, because I was competing against a man who used to wash his cottage cheese.
Yeah, he says that in this. Yeah. And he said that he used to eat like chocolate chip cookies. He used to be like addicted to chocolate chip cookies. And he said at one stage, so he would finish his training and go and buy 6 chocolate chip cookies and convince himself, well, I'll buy these 6 and they'll last me for the week. But then like later that, by the time he got home, there was 2 left, and then he think, well, I've got to eat them. And then he said, and Dave Scott was, like you say, rinsing his cottage cheese to get rid of any additional fat and all the rest of it. He said, I've got to change myself. And he totally changed. Yeah, it's fantastic. Oh dear.
You rise to the level of competition sometimes. And I suppose some of the best athletes have had the most competitive partners or the competitive opponents, because they've always, it's like an arms race, isn't it?
It's like McEnroe, Wimbledon coming up, McEnroe, Borg, and what was Martina Navratilova, and
Nadal,
Nadal, Federer, all these kind of, and Djokovic, this kind of these people, these rivalries, which is great.
Johnny Wilson and Eric Bristow, those athletic.
The darts. For references for people, that's probably not a very international reference. I don't know how much the rest of the world.
I don't know.
A bit local.
Barneveld and all that. Got Europeans in there.
Yeah, he's Dutch, isn't he? Yeah. So kind of touching on that, on the consistency element, which is, those of you who've been listening to us for the last nearly 150 episodes, probably consistency is the word that's been used more than any other.
They're very consistent, those listeners as well.
Those listeners are very consistent. If they've listened, exactly.
I'm going to get caught in some sort of consistency vortex in a minute. You need to be careful.
Yeah.
Consistency of hummus, yeah.
It's a different type of consistency, isn't it? Spelt the same, isn't it? I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay. But we were talking.
You lost your train of thought.
No, I haven't. I'm just trying to get back to it. I'm trying to get back to my point. But we were talking beforehand about steps. We were saying about what we've been, not the band, but we were talking earlier. Sorry. Oh dear.
I can imagine you dancing to steps.
We're going down I think we're all suffering.
Is that what's played in the spin class, or is it in the kettlebell class?
Well, put it this way, I'm going to have what's their name? Not McFly. Yeah, McFly. No,
Busted.
No, McFly. There's
Okay.
a park. There's pub in the park in Bath this weekend.
It was Bublé last time.
No, that was a Bublé concert. This is pub in the park, which is like Tom Kerridge does some stuff there and all that. It's all like a band.
Singing.
No, he's like, it's a food like a festival with bands. So they've got Bjorn again. They've got McFly. So I was saying to Sean, are they the ones that did the song about the yeah, 3,000. She goes, no, that's busted. And I was like, okay, I've got that wrong already. And then Gabrielle's playing. It's going to be like, yeah, so there's going to be a massive concert going on out the
I
back.
used to work with the manager of Gabrielle, name drop.
Oh, well, there you go.
Mm.
But yeah, maybe Steps will be next year. Who knows?
Maybe Steps. Anyway, Steps.
I was tour manager for Rosala once.
Everybody's free.
Yeah.
If whenever you go to a curry house, there's always chicken Rosala, and I always start singing "Everybody's Free" when I see that. But anyway,
she was doing jazz interpretations at the time.
Yeah. Oh well.
Okay. Anyway,
what are you talking about, James?
Back to Steps. We were talking about this earlier, where we touched on it, obviously, with Pete with his 6 million steps for the year. He's hit his 3 million steps, 2 weeks early, so he's kind of on track or ahead of schedule. And with my consistency group this week, we've started doing. I kind of asked the group because I was kind of not sure what people wanted from it, in terms of how much direction they wanted from me, or if they just wanted me there to ask questions or support, and a lot of them said, I quite like these challenges, which actually give me something to keep to and to aim for. And it's the old, is it Peter Drucker or Mark Drucker that, what gets measured gets managed. So we went for the steps, and I sort of said, you can pick your total. So it was an average of either for the week, an average of 7,000 a day, 10,000 a day, or 13,000 steps a day, which translates over the course of the week to 49,000 steps, 70,000 steps, or 91,000 steps. So everyone kind of picked what they were going to go for themselves. And I said, make it so it's a little bit of a stretch. If you're doing hardly any, go for the 7. But if you're always doing, kind of stretch yourself a little bit. And it's been really, really positive, actually, with people just posting the steps they've been doing at the end of each day. And for me, I was saying to Pete before we started recording, it's amazing. It's such a simple thing, but when you've got that and you've got a kind of a target, it does, it kind of focuses the mind on that, and throughout the day, if I find I've got like 20 minutes, I might say, I'll go out for a walk around the block and I'll put another 2,000 steps on, you know what I mean? And it kind of, it's really good. But the way that the point behind this this consistency thing is, the reason I averaged it out over the week is because obviously some days people might be working up in London, some days people might be working from home, some days you have more commitment. So if you average it out over the course of the week, it allows you to have a few peaks and troughs, but the average is going to be that number per day. And Pete had mentioned that kind of ties into everything really with relation to training and diet and lifestyle. With calories, for example, calorie consumption, you are either putting on weight or losing weight or maintaining weight based on your rolling average, and it might be a rolling average over 7 days or 14 days or 28 days, but the rolling average will dictate whether you're going up or going down. And I'm sure you guys are like me. Sometimes people will come to you and they'll say, oh, I've been really good for the last couple of days. I've been really good since the weekend. Why has this not happened? But the kind of the scales don't lie. Do you know what I mean? And the rolling average is obviously the trends either moving up, moving down, or staying fairly static. So I think that's a really interesting kind of thing for us to maybe talk about for a bit, or maybe think about.
I've just been doing a calculation while you were talking there. So there've been 166 days so far this year.
Yeah.
Right. And I've got my target. So averaging it out, it's something like whatever it was, 17,000.
Did you say it was like 15 or 17,000?
15 and a half or whatever. And I've done 18,000, right? But the target I've got in here is just 10,000 because it's just in there as an average target, right? That isn't my target, but I don't need to know what my target is. I just do it. But I've got 136 days over 10,000, which means there's 30 days this year that I've not done 10,000 steps. So you might look at that and go like, well, I haven't done 10,000 a day. I've failed. But actually, because there's other days when I've done 40,000, other days when I've done 25. There's other days when I've done 25 and what have you. So it averages out. Like we said, sorry, this is Steve's dog. It averages out. You know, so we were talking about this before we started recording. We were talking about this before we started recording of you can have a day when you don't reach your target or you don't get out of bed or whatever, you know, for whatever reason. And it's like, well, I failed. And it's like, well, no, because you just have to do more tomorrow. And then a little bit less and a little bit more. And then it averages out across the week. Or if it doesn't average across the week, average it across the month, you know, and then you still get the result that you want.
And there's a thing I can't remember. It might have been John Goodman or something like this. Not the actor, coach, Roseanne Barr. Sorry, we're going off on tangents today. The guy from Instagram, he's like a PT kind of guy, and I think it was something like the way that I'm kind of extrapolating and moving it out a little bit, but the way that you look, maybe the way you feel, the way you perform, is just an accumulation of your habits over a period of time. You know what I mean? Over a longer period of time. So the way you look, the way you move, the way you feel, the way you perform is based on your habits. And this is why it comes so much down to this consistency of, I already feel, and this is only day 4 of consciously trying to walk 13,000 steps a day. And bearing in mind, I'm a kind of a fit guy anyway, or a fairly fit guy anyway. I can notice that I feel the difference, you know, after 4 days of doing this. Just like, you know, if you consciously say, I'm going to drink 3 liters of water a day, and you do it for 3, 4, 5, 6 days, you will start to feel different. It doesn't take long to start to feel the change, does it? But sometimes people do it for 1, 2, or 3 days and expect miracles to happen, you know, where they've kind of been inactive or not looking after themselves for the last 3 decades, and they do it for 3 days or 3 weeks, and they're disappointed that, you know, they haven't totally transformed in 3 days or 3 weeks. You know, it's got to be that consistency, and it's boring because we say it all the time, but
well, it's interesting because I've just I was thinking, I don't know my step count. And then I suddenly realized, who's going to know more about me than I know? A tech company will, my phone. So I've just been on Apple Health, and I've obviously at some point set it up.
No, you don't need to. It just does it automatically, because that's how I track my steps, and I'd never opened it before. Yeah, I've done
10,885 steps on average over the last 6 months. And today I've done 7,600. I'm quite pleased with that, actually, because I wasn't sure what it was like. So that's not bad, because I was wondering if sometimes I just didn't do enough.
And the only thing is, as well, you have to have your phone in your pocket. So that's the thing. So most of the time at the gym, I would I'd leave my phone on a bench or something while I'm doing training sessions and I'm moving around. And I never have my phone on or a watch on when I train. I don't want, because I'm shoes off, bare feet, watch off, phone down, abacus out, you know, get ready to go. Abacus out, yeah. So I never track anything. So a lot of things I'm not tracking, but just when I'm walking around now in the gym, I just make sure the phone's in my pocket. And so far today, I'm on about 6,000, you know. I've had a couple of meetings where I've been sat down having a coffee with people and things like that, but I'll get that to 13,000 by the end of the day. But it is interesting. And it is that, you know, what gets measured gets managed. And that's why I can see that for some people, it's not something I've ever done, but, you know, tracking calories and, you know, and fastidiously, if that's the word, you know, using something like MyFitnessPal, you know, if you do it, it works. And I think you just have to be careful not to get obsessed by it, you know.
I think the way, so because this is what can happen. People can get obsessed with the thing of I have to track, and then they just want to. They think they have to track for the rest of their lives, and then you get other people who think, I don't want to have to track stuff for the rest of my life. So using the steps as an example, I know that if I go up to Lansdowne Playing Fields, which is up the road, if I go up to there, it's 7,000 steps. I know that if I go over to the edge of the racecourse, that's going to be like about 10,000. I know if I walk all the way around to where the Battle of Lansdowne was, I mean, I'm naming places here that people won't know, but it doesn't matter. And there's a monument there. I know that's 16,000 steps. I know if I cut that a bit shorter and walk and do a shorter loop, it's going to be about 25,000 steps on, like when I come back and make a shorter loop. I know that if I do the skyline, that's about 23,000 steps. I know it because I've done it and I've tracked it. So I know what these things are. So I know if I'm like, right, I want to go out and do 10,000 steps today, or I want to do 5 miles or 6 miles or whatever it is. I know it in steps. I know it in miles. I know it in kilometers just from doing it. So I know, so I can plan my day and say, right, I've got 2 hours for a dog walk. I know I can go down to Bathampton Meadows because it's a warm day. Sid will get a swim in the canal. There's some water down there. It takes me exactly 2 hours and it's 15,000 steps. Bosh, done. And I know that. And it's amazing how this stuff feeds into your mind without you then having to think about it. It becomes kind of unconscious. The same as calories. So when you're eating food, you go, well, I was just gonna relate it to that. If people do track and become aware of grams of protein in each thing they eat and calories in each thing they eat, you don't necessarily then need to be weighing stuff and looking at labels for the rest of your life, because you kind of have an idea. And with me, I mean, I got this from Mark Bell, kind of said this, that I weigh myself once a week. And exactly the same time each week. And when I step on the scales, if I'm up or down by half a kilo, it's, neither here nor there, you know what I mean? 500 grams. But you kind of get a sense of where you're at. And if I notice that I'm going up, I know, okay, if I don't want to go up, if I'm moving in a direction I don't want to move in, up or down, then you can make the adjustments accordingly. You just I weigh myself once a week. And I've kind of got a good idea of where I'm at from doing that. I'm
going to be awkward.
Yeah.
I don't believe I think tracking is only useful in one part, at one stage, which is at the beginning. It tells you where you are. So you track something and it says, that's where I am. Then after that, I'm interested in planning and then reporting. So I plan what I'm going to do, and then I report back on what I did. And then working out whether or not there was a discrepancy between the planning and the reporting, because the reporting will tell me whether or not I've done it, and it will tell me whether or not I did it based on what I planned. And the tracking will only be an intermittent thing. Whereas I think a lot of people, they use all these tracking devices to tell them what's happening. As much as I know that there are black holes in the center of the Milky Way, it doesn't really tell me what to do with my life. It doesn't really tell me what I'm going to do if I know that the speed of sound is, whatever above water, it's something that is knowledge, but without action. So I think tracking for me, that's why I didn't even know that my tracking thing was on. I'm more interested in knowing what I have to do and the fact that I've done it. So when I get my thing in from a coach, I say, okay, that's what I have to do. That's been the planning. I've outsourced my planning, but I don't outsource my reporting. I get that done. And then I know I've taken action.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it's kind of like, but there is a point of, I suppose, assessing and measuring, though, which I suppose is all just words, really, because at some stage you're gonna retest, or you're gonna look, and tracking is, really, but you could say that getting given a program for the week and you've got it, and you work your way through it, and you tick off the things you've done, and you make sure you've done everything on that list. That's really another form of tracking. You know what I mean? I suppose
the tracking is passive, particularly in the modern world of tech.
Tracking can drive behavior. It can. I mean, this is an interesting discussion, but it can drive behavior, because I'm seeing that with the steps, for example. It can help you drive, behavior change. Awareness, I suppose tracking for
you've got
awareness,
a plan,
awareness.
And then the app reports back essentially that you've done it. I see what you mean. It's a subtle distinction, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's kind of like, I think we all have to kind of think about what we mean by tracking, and why we track, and why we plan, and why we maybe assess and reassess, and what we assess and reassess, and how we do that, and how often we do that, and all the rest of it. But it's an interesting discussion.
I've got a thing like that with calories. Sorry, the dog's good. I've got a thing like that with calories. And it's using kind of what you've just said. your acceptance that what you've been doing up until this point has got you to where you want to be, and then becoming aware that you need to change that, which is kind of what Paul's saying, I think. So using a calorie tracker to say, don't worry about where you need to be. What are you doing right now? And if you're eating too many calories, if you think you need to eat 2,000, you're eating 3,000 because you're tracking what you're actually doing, there's some data. So the way I talk about it is to say, right now, don't try and change everything, because what you're going to try and do is change actions and behaviors and habits and lifestyle and all that in one go. And it's really hard. And you're going to learn a new skill. It's really hard to do. So just keep tracking it. And then I kind of get people to write down what they're already eating, as in through a tracking app, to say, what are the highest protein things that you already eat? So you don't even have to change what you eat. Just identify those and then start eating more of those, more calories of protein, and then you'll need to eat less of everything else. And then it'll start to come into balance. And then you can start to say, right, here's what my target is. And then after that, you can maybe plan one meal for the day and then eat the other meals. And then eventually over time, get into planning 2 meals and then planning the day ahead. But do it very gently, and then it eases you into that new behavior. So yeah, like I agree with both of you, to be fair, but like,
yeah, I mean, I don't think there's
I
don't think there's like a right and I think it's like you say, it's and I remember when we had James Brees on and we did the episode with him about fat loss, and he said there's 2 different kind of types of people, if you like, and you maybe match your approach to the type of person that you are. And if you are very analytical and you love spreadsheets and graphs and numbers and calculations, maybe you go more down a tracking, recording, planning, grams of protein, calories, macronutrient split, all that kind of thing path. If you're more free and flowing and artistic and relaxed, maybe you go down more a habit change model kind of thing. So there's different ways, isn't there, of doing it for different people, I think.
Can I be devil's advocate again?
Yep.
I think if you want to invest more in hope, you choose the softer approach. I think ultimately the highest achievers in the world will have a highly structured approach in some way. They will be extremely disciplined in some way. Like when we talk about artists, I suspect Michelangelo didn't leave much to chance. I think he was hugely disciplined, and I think it can. I think is the approach where you say, look, let's just take on board as much as you can possibly handle at the moment is a place that I like to start a lot of people. But ultimately, if someone comes around to me saying, hey, I'm not seeing things at the speed I want and it doesn't feel as certain, then we have to get the whole situation by the scruff of his neck and say, okay, right now we're going to have to control so much more variables, and you're going to have to dedicate part of your mind to doing this really well. And you can't just hope. It can't be too much hope involved and just layering in things slowly. It depends what the intention is of the individual to go at the pace, because you can pick up a guitar, play it occasionally and hope you're going to come up with a tune and come up with some songs and learn how to play the blues. Or you can go right, I'm going to work with a blues guitarist and they're going to teach me about how to learn the blues. I'm going to play in blues clubs. I'm going to write all the time. I'm going to come up with these things and I'm going to really invest myself in the process of becoming excellent.
I don't think you're being devil's advocate there. I think you're being sensible. There's not anyone if you're talking high performance, if you look, there's not anyone who winds up at the Olympics who has not
accidentally
accidentally
just really good at sprinting,
who has not for the previous 4, 8, 12 years literally had their week given to them on a plate and told, you're going to train here, 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 and here. You're going to eat this, 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 and this. You're going to weigh this, 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 and this. You're going to wear this, 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 and this. And you're going to go to bed at this time. And you're going to wake up at this time. So yeah, 100%. But most people that we deal with in life are not like, most people that we come across and that we are ourselves are probably a bit more relaxed and flowing, and and not quite, if we're 100% honest, and not quite that committed to it. So yeah, it's
do we
really...
say that to people, or do we? I mean, how would you approach that? Say, yeah, we can do it this way. Just to be aware that.
I think I say to people point blank a lot of the time that we had a new intake start our Fit for Life thing on program last weekend. And in the initial orientation, I sort of say, look, in these 6 weeks, typical results that we see are between this and this. But obviously, the more you stick to what I'm telling you to do, the more you make sure you turn up to every session, the more you get to bed on time, the more you do your steps that I'm asking you, the more you drink your water, the better results you're going to get. It's kind of like, and you decide, there's a sliding scale there. If you put in 50% effort, you're going to get 50% results. If you put in, so I think people understand that when we all understand that, don't we? If we're honest with ourselves, we might think, well, I want to put in 20% effort and get 100% out, but we know that in reality that doesn't work for anything. But it just, most people don't want 100% results, including the three of us on the show. We've got other stuff going on. It depends what's your, boring again. What's your why? Why are you doing this? What do you want out of it? What's the goal? Is the goal to have 8% body fat? No. Is the goal to get to the Olympics? No.
So is our goal as a trainer then to say, like, actually, because there's, like, as Peter said, there's so many things to work on, isn't there? And it can be overloading. It's like trying to pick up all the weights in the gym at once and say, why can't I lift them? Got to work on diet, sleep, water, strength training, joint health, blah, 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 time management, etc. It seems to be, in a way, our job is to say, actually, we're going to do a couple of things, but actually, we're not just going to do a couple of things airy-fairy. What I want you to do is do a couple of things really, really well. And whereas an Olympic athlete or a high performer would be doing everything really, really well, washing the cottage cheese, getting to bed on time, using the heart rate monitor, doing the strength training, doing the joint work, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas we're just saying, okay, for your goals, we're going to fast track as much as we can, but you're going to have to put 100% effort into one area or two areas, Yeah,
you just have to find the area which is going to give you the most bang for your buck, and you have to meet each person where they're at. I did a post the other day about like, it was Sunday morning reflections. It was just like different things. And I kind of, one of the things I just pulled up, it says, I've learned that unless something is ridiculously simple and straightforward, the majority of people will not even attempt it, So you have to kind of, that's why I like the WWS. That's the walk, the water, the sleep, and I hammer that to people, which we got from Strength Matters from James, walk 7,000 steps a day, drink 7 glasses of water a day, sleep 7 hours, sleep a night, as a thing, train. If you can train 2 or 3 times a week, brilliant. Prioritize protein, all these simple things, but you have to kind of pick where they're at and help them. So our job as a trainer or as a coach, I suppose, is to find out where the person is, find out where they want to go, find out how committed they are, and help try and give them the logical first step, and then the logical second step, and then the logical third step, And yeah.
I would say that's the thing about earlier, about using calories as an example. So using like someone's entire lifestyle as an example, it's a similar sort of thing of what Paul's just said there as well, of like the awareness of, I need to change all these things. And it's like, right, well, that's not going to happen. Some people can do it. They can Goggins it, if you like, and do it. But that's a very, very small percentage of people, especially busy people who've got kids and lives and all that. So it's like, right, what is going to work best for you? And that's working out. And it's like low-hanging fruit, whatever you want to call it, is like, what is going to be the easiest for you to implement to get you started? Because that Olympic athlete didn't come out of the womb that disciplined. and they learn it from a young age, don't they? And then it's like by the time they're at the Olympics in their mid-20s or whatever, it's like they've been doing it for 10 years since they were 15, probably a bit longer, but they were just into that discipline like through school and all of that. So, but they started out on one thing and then realize they like that, and then it goes to the next thing and the next thing. So they actually, it's habit stacking or whatever you want, however you want to look at it, all these different concepts of it, it's all of them put into action for that specific person. So if it's for somebody who's got so much to change, then there's no way they're going to get better sleep, because they can't function like at the minute anyway. They can't think of that. They've got too much going in their head. It's like, right, well, either count your wins or just drink more water or whatever. Start with something, get some discipline, learn discipline. And then, because the amount of discipline they've put into getting themselves to where they are, if they can put that much discipline into getting themselves out of where they are, then we're on to a winner, aren't we? So
I think the most important thing, is getting the ball rolling and building some momentum, isn't it? Initially, getting the ball rolling and building some momentum, and then you fine tune along the way. But no, it's fascinating, guys. I think we'll start to wrap up there if that's okay. Really, really, really good chat that. And in the coming up, we've mentioned, I said probably the most used word of the 148 episodes is consistency. Possibly two of the most quoted people of the 148 episodes, Phil Maffetone and Dan John, will be on soon again on the podcast, either individually or possibly together, which would be a world first. So we're trying to look at that at the moment, but we will be having Phil Maffetone and Dan John back on. We've also got Becca Roberts, who is the current UK strongest woman. Pete and I saw her win that a couple of weekends ago in Nottingham. She won it in 2022, 2023. I think she was the 2021 world's strongest woman as well. So Becca is coming on in a few weeks. Like I said, we've got Chris Branch back on next week to kind of unpack and discuss and review his 100-mile effort, the run we spoke about last time. So we've got a really, really fantastic few weeks of guests coming up, which will be great. So I don't suppose, Pete and Paul, we've got any closing thoughts, have we? Because we've kind of been talking.
I've got a semi-naked contractor walking through my house. He's cleaning the front of the building.
Which half?
The top half. It's all right.
Anyway,
right. No, there's never any closing thoughts on these because we've
been talking for an hour, haven't we, between us? So no, that's great. So we will be back next week for episode 149 with Chris Branch to unpack his 100-mile effort. And like I say, Phil Maffetone, Dan John, Becca Roberts, Chris next week. We've got some great weeks coming ahead of us. Thank you all for, we're coming up to 3 years now doing this every single week. So that is consistent and consistency as well. Yeah, doing this podcast. So coming up to 3 years. So thank you to all of you for listening. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave a review if you're listening or watching on a platform that allows you to do so. Please do give us a follow on Instagram and Facebook, and give us a subscribe on YouTube. And if you'd like to join the Facebook group, just go into groups, search Health Oddity, and click to join, and one of us will let you in. We will see you next week for episode 149 with Chris Branch. Until then, bye-bye.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.